Hello and welcome to XSS module. Here XSS stands for cross-site scripting, and cross-site scripting attacks are a type of injection in which malicious scripts are injected into otherwise benign and trusted websites. XSS attacks occur when an attacker uses a web application. Cross-site scripting attacks are a type of injection in which malicious scripts are injected into otherwise benign and trusted websites. XSS attacks occur when an attacker uses a web application to send malicious code, generally in form of a browser-side script, to a different end user. So in this module, we will learn how XSS attacks are carried out and how attackers inject malicious JavaScript into the applications and where to inject these payloads. We will all learn this in the module. Going ahead with types of XSS are stored XSS, reflected XSS, and DOM-based XSS. So what's the difference between these three? We will learn about this. So stored XSS is also known as persistent or second order XSS, and it arises when an application receives data from an untrusted source and includes that data within its later HTTP responses in an unsafe way. Suppose you inject JavaScript payload and the application stores that payload into its source file, and every time you visit a web page, the JavaScript that the attacker has injected it executes in your browser. So this type of XSS attack is called stored XSS because the payload gets stored in the source code of the web page. So here is a very simple example. So a message board application lets users submit messages which are displayed to other users. This is a simple paragraph tag and hello, this is my message. So the application doesn't perform any other processing of the data. So an attacker can easily send a message that attacks the other users, and you've injected the script tag inside the p tag, and whatever you want to execute in the victim's browser you can. So moving ahead, what is reflected XSS? Reflected cross-site scripting or XSS arises when an application receives data in an HTTP request and includes that data within the response in an unsafe way. So in reflected XSS, the payload doesn't get stored in the source file, but it is reflected in the immediate response. So here is a simple example of reflected XSS. So again, this is a URL where the parameter message has the data, and here is a very simple p tag having data status all is well. The application doesn't perform any other processing of the data, so an attacker can easily construct an attack like this. So you can inject your script tag in the parameter message and you can forward this to your victim. So now what is DOM-based XSS? DOM-based XSS is also known as DOM XSS, and it arises when an application contains some client-side JavaScript that processes data from an untrusted source in an unsafe way, usually by writing the data back to the DOM. So let's consider this example. Here, an application uses some JavaScript to read the value from an input field and write that value to an element within the HTML. So this is the variable search, and this equals to document.getElementById search.value. So this will get the value of the search parameter, and variable results is equals to document.getElementById results, and variable results will store the value of result, and results.innerHTML is equals to you searched for plus search. So whatever that you have searched, it will come after you searched for. So if the attacker can control the value of input field, they can easily construct a malicious value that causes their own script to execute. So what if we search for img src is equals to 1 and on error whatever we want to execute? So this payload will be executed in this application. So in a typical case, the input field would be populated from part of the HTTP request, such as a URL query string parameter, allowing the attacker to deliver an attack using a malicious URL. So we have this payload here, and when we search this in the application, this is very similar to reflected XSS. So XSS is the highest reported bug type on bug bounty programs. Believe me, there are hundreds of XSS that have been reported to all bug bounty programs, and it consists of 33% of the bug type. So XSS is very rewarding vulnerability type, and so moving ahead, we will see the practical exploitation of XSS. We will be exploiting a vulnerable app. We will be testing for DOM, reflected, and stored XSS there.